Grand Admiral Vexthor of the Drachnid Empire stood aboard the bridge of the DSS Inevitability, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the dim starlight as he observed the peculiar vessels before him. The human ships looked almost primitive to his enhanced vision, their hulls bearing what appeared to be crude armor plating and lacking the sleek, biomechanical aesthetics that dominated galactic engineering. "Fascinating," he muttered, multiple mandibles clicking in what his subordinates recognized as amusement. "These are the defenders of Earth. They look like they barely understand basic void flight principles." His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Zira, brought up a detailed scan of the human fleet. "Sir, their ships appear to be using some form of recreational power source. Our sensors can't make sense of it. The energy signatures are completely chaotic." "Recreational." Vexthor's crystalline ridge flared with confusion. "Explain." "They seem to be generating power through what appears to be games, sir. The energy patterns resemble those of complex mathematical puzzles and simulations. It defies all known principles of military engineering." The Grand Admiral's amusement grew. The Drachnid Empire had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, developing technologies through rigorous military doctrine and precise scientific advancement. These humans, barely a century into their space age, were powering warships through games. It had to be a mistake. "Open communications," he commanded. "Let's see how these primitives respond to proper military protocol." The holographic screen materialized, revealing a human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair tied in complex braids. She wore what appeared to be a simple uniform adorned with various colorful patches that seemed more decorative than functional. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Imagination. Welcome to Sol Space, Admiral. I trust you're not here to cause trouble." Her tone was almost playful, as if she were greeting an old friend rather than addressing the commander of the galaxy's most feared military force. Vexthor's mandibles clicked in disapproval. "Captain Chen, I am Grand Admiral Vexthor of the Drachnid Empire. Your species has been deemed a potential threat to galactic stability due to your uncontrolled technological advancement. Surrender your vessels and prepare for integration into the Empire." Chen's response was not what he expected. She laughed. Not a nervous laugh, but a genuine expression of amusement that made his crystalline ridge vibrate with irritation. "Oh, Admiral," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. "You really should have done better research. See, we humans have a saying, don't judge a book by its cover. Though in this case, maybe we should say don't judge a ship by its hull." As if on cue, Zyra's console erupted with warnings. "Sir, the human vessels, they're changing." The seemingly crude armor plating on the human ships began to shift and flow like liquid mercury. What had appeared to be basic metal restructured itself into complex geometric patterns that hurt Vexthor's eyes to look at directly. "Impossible," he whispered. "Their technology. It's adaptive." "Oh, this." Chen gestured casually. "Just a little something we developed while trying to create better gaming consoles. Turns out the principles behind rendering dynamic virtual environments translate beautifully to real space engineering." "Who knew?" Before Vexthor could respond, his tactical officer reported more impossibilities. The human ships were now generating energy fields that seemed to bend reality itself, and their weapons, if they could be called that, appeared to be powered by what his sensors identified as pure mathematical concepts given physical form. "Sir," Zyra's voice trembled slightly, "they're not using any technology we understand. Their entire approach to space warfare appears to be based on entertainment systems." Chen's smile grew wider. "You know what's really fun about games, Admiral? They teach you to think outside the box, to look at problems from angles nobody else would consider. Would you like to see what happens when we apply Tetris principles to space combat?" As Vexthor watched in growing horror, he realized his empire had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that military might and rigorous doctrine were the only paths to technological advancement. These humans, with their playful approach to physics and casual disregard for proper scientific development, had stumbled upon principles that his species had never even imagined. The game was about to begin, and for the first time in his long career, Grand Admiral Vexthor wasn't sure his side knew the rules. The Drachnid fleet's formation was perfect, each ship positioned according to millennia of tactical doctrine. Grand Admiral Vexthor should have felt confident. Instead, he watched with growing unease as the human vessels moved in patterns that seemed to defy basic combat logic. "Sir, they're dancing." Sub-Commander Zuber's confusion was evident in her resonating voice. Indeed, the Earth vessels were moving in fluid, rhythmic patterns that seemed more suited to an entertainment performance than warfare. Captain Chen's voice came through their comm system, still carrying that infuriating tone of casual amusement. "Ever heard of capoeira, Admiral? It's a martial art disguised as a dance. Humans have a long history of hiding deadly serious things behind seemingly playful facades." Vexthor's crystalline ridge pulsed with irritation. "Enough games. Launch the quantum-tipped warheads. Let's see how well they dance through a temporal explosion." The Drachnid missiles streaked across space, their quantum warheads designed to tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. No defense could stop them. They operated on too many dimensional levels simultaneously. "Oh, interesting approach," Chen commented, as if critiquing a chess move. "Hey, Marcus, show them what we learned from that dance game tournament last month." On Vexthor's tactical display, the human ships began moving in impossible patterns. Each vessel seemed to step between moments of time, their movements synchronized to some unheard rhythm. The quantum warheads, designed to strike across multiple temporal planes, found themselves hitting nothing but empty space. That's impossible," Zyra whispered. "They're using dance patterns to predict and avoid quantum probability matrices." "Not predict," Chen corrected cheerfully. "We're improvising. You see, there was this popular game called Dance Revolution. Taught humans a lot about reading patterns and responding with precise timing. Combine those principles with quantum mechanics and, well," she gestured at the completely ineffective warheads. "You get this." Vexthor's tactical mind raced. Everything they tried was being countered by methods that shouldn't work, yet somehow did. Its ships launched electromagnetic pulse weapons. The humans countered with what they called rhythm game shield harmonics. They tried gravitational weapons. The humans responded with defense patterns based on something called breakdancing physics. "Sir," his science officer interrupted, "I've analyzed their defense systems. They're using principles from human sports and games to manipulate fundamental forces. It's like they found a completely different way to understand physics." "Different?" Chen's voice carried a hint of pride. "We just never saw the point in making things unnecessarily complicated. Why spend centuries developing rigid doctrine when you can learn from play? Games teach adaptation, creativity, and most importantly, they're fun." As if to demonstrate her point, the human ships began moving in new patterns. Vexthor recognized the basic structure of a classic pincer movement, but it was being executed with variations he'd never seen before. "This one's inspired by basketball," Chen explained casually. "The art of the fake-out, creating space where there seems to be none, and always keeping your opponent guessing. We find sports strategies translate surprisingly well to space combat." The Drachnid formation, despite its theoretical perfection, found itself being pulled apart by movements that defied traditional military logic. Ships that should have been trapped found themselves facing empty space, while human vessels appeared in supposedly impossible positions. "How?" Vexthor demanded. "How did your species develop these techniques?" "Simple," Chen replied. "We never forgot how to play. While your empire was building its military doctrine, we were creating games, sports, and dances. Turns out those activities teach you more about the true nature of space, time, and combat than any amount of rigid training." A new alert blared on the Inevitabilities bridge. The human ships were now generating energy fields that seemed to pulse in time with what Chen called music. And now, she announced with evident delight, "Let me show you what happens when you apply dubstep principles to quantum physics." Fair warning, it's about to get loud. As his carefully planned battle dissolved into chaos, Grand Admiral Vex Thor began to understand a fundamental truth. The Drachnid Empire had spent millennia learning the rules of warfare, while humans had spent their time learning how to break them. The holographic displays aboard the DSS Inevitability flickered with cascading data as the Drachnid science team struggled to analyze the human fleet's capabilities. Grand Admiral Vex Thor watched his finest minds attempt to make sense of what they were seeing, their crystalline forms pulsing with frustrated confusion. It defies every principle of technological progression, Chief Scientist Ixlana declared, her translucent appendages gesturing at the streams of data. They achieved quantum manipulation through entertainment, advanced spatial mechanics through physical recreation. There must be some mistake. The battle had reached a stalemate, not through any kind of military equilibrium, but because the Drachnids had ceased offensive operations in their desperate attempt to understand what they were facing. Captain Chen had graciously agreed to a temporary cessation of hostilities, though her ships continued their mesmerizing dance through space. Perhaps, Vex Thor suggested, his pride struggling with the words, "We should simply ask them." When Chen's image appeared on the command deck's main screen, she was sipping from a container marked coffee, another human mystery the Drachnids had yet to decipher. Having trouble with the analysis, she asked kindly, "Your technological development pattern is impossible," Ixlana stated flatly. "Species progress through clearly defined stages of advancement. Military applications drive innovation. This is universal law." Chen's laugh echoed through the command deck. "Universal law. That's your first mistake right there. Humans have a saying, rules are meant to be broken. Though in this case, it might be more accurate to say we never accepted those rules in the first place." She set down her coffee cup and leaned forward. "Look, while your empire was building better weapons, we were trying to build better ways to have fun. Do you know how we developed our quantum shields? A group of kids playing with soap bubbles asked why force fields in movies couldn't work the same way. Instead of dismissing the idea, we investigated it." The Drachnid scientists exchanged glances, their crystalline forms shimmering with disbelief. "Children? You let children influence military technology development." "We let everyone influence everything," Chen corrected. "That's the secret you're missing. We don't separate military technology from civilian technology, or work from play, or science from art. Everything connects, everything contributes." She gestured, and a new hologram appeared, a complex diagram that seemed to morph between a child's drawing and an advanced quantum equation. "This is the blueprint for our temporal drive." It started as a drawing in a kindergarten class. One kid asked why spaceships couldn't just skip between the seconds like jumping between stepping stones across a river. Ixlana's crystalline form practically vibrated with objection. "But that's not how temporal mechanics works." "According to whom?" Chen challenged. "The universe, or just the rules you decided to follow." When that kid made that drawing, they hadn't learned it was impossible yet. So instead of dismissing it, we asked, why not? Turns out, if you approach temporal mechanics from that perspective, thinking of time as stepping stones in a river, whole new possibilities open up. Vex Thor found himself drawn into the conversation despite his military bearing. But how do you maintain order? Progress must have structure, must follow proper sequences. Must it? Chen interrupted gently. That's another assumption. We found that creativity flows best when it's free to make unexpected connections. Our greatest breakthroughs often come from combining ideas that supposedly don't belong together, like using music theory to understand quantum harmonics or applying dance choreography to fleet movements. She paused, studying their reactions. "You know what your empire's real weakness is, not your technology. That's actually quite impressive. It's your certainty. You're so sure about how things must work that you've closed yourselves off to how they could work. The command deck fell silent as the implications sank in. The Drachnid Empire had spent millennia perfecting their understanding of the universe according to rigid principles. Humans had spent their time questioning those principles, playing with possibilities and finding paths that no one else had imagined existed. Think of it this way, Chen continued, her voice gentle but firm. You built your civilization like a military campaign. Everything planned, structured, and proceeding according to doctrine. We built ours like a playground, full of experimentation, imagination, and the freedom to try new things without fear of failure. Vexthor's crystalline ridge pulsed with a new emotion, not anger or frustration, but something closer to wonder. You're saying that your species' greatest strength is chaos. Not chaos, Chen corrected. Creativity. The willingness to look at the universe not as it is, but as it could be. Every human child knows that the most important question isn't how does this work, but what if? The silence on the DSS Inevitability's command deck shattered as emergency alerts blared across every console. Sub-Commander Zira's crystalline form pulsed with alarm as she processed the sensor readings. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. They're coming from everywhere. Grand Admiral Vexthor watched in astonishment as hundreds of spatial distortions bloomed across his tactical display. From each ripple emerged human vessels of varying designs, some barely larger than shuttles, others rivaling his flagship in size. But what truly caught his attention was their diversity. No two ships looked exactly alike. I believe, Captain Chen's voice carried a hint of pride. It's time we showed you what happens when you let 7 billion creative minds approach spaceship design their own way. The new arrivals moved with the same fluid grace as Chen's original fleet, but each squadron demonstrated different, impossible principles. Some ships seemed to phase in and out of reality in patterns matching what humans called jazz improvisation. Others warped space around themselves using principles derived from ancient human board games. How? Vexthor demanded, his military discipline finally cracking. How did you hide such a fleet? Hide? Chen chuckled. Admiral, we didn't hide anything. Your sensors saw exactly what was there. You just didn't understand what you were looking at. Remember when I mentioned how we let everyone influence our technology? Well, these are the results. She gestured, and the tactical display shifted to show detailed readings of the human ships. Each vessel's energy signature was unique, operating on principles that seemed to draw from every aspect of human culture. See that group there? Chen pointed to a squadron of sleek vessels moving in perfect synchronization. Their drives are based on principles we discovered studying ballet. And those? She indicated another group whose ships seemed to flow like liquid. They used technology developed by a team of marine biologists and video game designers who wondered why spaceships couldn't move like schools of fish. Ixlana, who had been frantically analyzing the data, suddenly straightened. These energy readings, they're not just different approaches to the same technology. Each ship is doing something fundamentally unique. Exactly. Chen beamed. When we started reaching for the stars, we didn't just ask our military engineers how to do it. We asked everyone. Artists, musicians, children, philosophers. Everyone had ideas, and we listened to them all. Some failed, sure, but enough succeeded to give us something your empire never managed. True diversity of thought. The human ships began moving in concert, their seemingly chaotic movements resolving into patterns of staggering complexity. It was like watching a dance, a game, and a military operation all at once. You see, Admiral, Chen continued, her tone gentler now. While your empire was building the perfect military, we were building something far more powerful, a civilization that never stopped asking what if. Every ship you see represents a different answer to that question. Vexthor watched as human vessels demonstrated technologies his scientists had deemed impossible. One squadron appeared to be using cosmic background radiation as a propulsion source, an idea that had apparently come from a child's question about surfing on starlight. Another group employed defensive systems based on the principles of human musical harmony. "Sir," Zygra reported, her voice tight with stress, "I'm detecting more ships arriving. They're coming from directions that don't exist." Chen nodded approvingly. "Ah, those would be our experimental ships, the ones using technology based on abstract art principles. Turns out Picasso had some interesting things to teach us about spatial geometry." The Drachnid command staff watched in stunned silence as their careful models of reality were systematically dismantled by human innovation. Each new arrival demonstrated another impossible thing, another barrier broken by asking what if, instead of what's allowed. "I need you to understand something, Admiral," Chen said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "This isn't just a demonstration of military power. It's a demonstration of what's possible when you stop limiting yourself to what you think should work and start exploring what could work. Every ship out there represents thousands of people daring to imagine something new." Vexthor looked at his tactical display, really looked at it, and finally understood. The Drachnid Empire had spent millennia perfecting a single path to the stars. Humanity had created millions of paths, each one unique, each one valid, each one adding something new to their civilization's understanding of the universe. "The question now," Chen concluded, "isn't whether you can defeat us. The question is, are you ready to learn with us?" 6 months after the encounter between the Drachnid Empire and humanity, the galactic landscape had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Great Hall of the Drachnid High Command, once a monument to military precision, now hosted an unprecedented gathering. Grand Admiral Vexthor stood before the Imperial Council, his crystalline form reflecting the multicolored holographic displays that filled the chamber. "The human integration program has exceeded all projections," he reported, gesturing to the data streams that danced around him. "Their influence on our society has been transformative." The council chamber itself testified to this transformation. Where once there had been only stark geometric patterns, now there were flowing designs inspired by human art. Even the traditional crystalline architecture had been modified, using principles derived from what humans called jazz fusion. "Show us," commanded High Counselor Zextal, her ancient form shimmering with curiosity. Vexthor activated the central display, revealing scenes from across the Empire. Drachnid shipyards now produced vessels of wildly varying designs, each incorporating ideas from different aspects of both cultures. Young Drachnids gathered in new creativity centers, where they were encouraged to question established principles and imagine new possibilities. "The humans call this cross-pollination," Vexthor explained. "Their Captain Chen has been instrumental in helping us understand their methods. It turns out our crystalline nature, which we always viewed purely as a military advantage, has artistic and scientific applications we never imagined." The display shifted to show a new class of ship being constructed. Its hull was a perfect fusion of Drachnid crystalline technology and human creative principles, creating something entirely new. This vessel's quantum drive was designed by a team of our military engineers working alongside human children. Vexthor continued, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "The children's questions about why ships couldn't dream through space led our scientists to discover an entirely new approach to quantum mechanics." The council chamber hummed with surprised murmurs. A junior counselor raised her crystalline appendage. "But how do we maintain order with such chaos in our development process?" "That was our first question too," Vexthor admitted. "But we've learned that creativity doesn't equal chaos. The humans have taught us that innovation thrives best when it's guided by imagination rather than constrained by doctrine." The display showed more images. Drachnid and human scientists collaborating on projects that merged crystal technology with human gaming principles. Military strategists learning from human sports and dance choreographers. Artists from both species creating new forms of expression that defied traditional categories. Our empire spent millennia believing that power came from perfecting established patterns, Vex Thor continued. The humans showed us that true power comes from the ability to imagine new patterns entirely. Captain Chen, who had been quietly observing from a corner of the chamber, stepped forward at Vex Thor's gesture. She smiled at the assembled council. "What your people have achieved in 6 months is remarkable," she said. "You've taken our approach to innovation and applied it in ways we never imagined. Your crystalline technology, combined with our creative methods, is opening up possibilities that neither of our species could have discovered alone." The display shifted one final time, showing a galaxy map dotted with points of light representing joint human-drachnid projects. Other species were already beginning to take notice, sending observers and envoys to learn about this new approach to civilization. "We stand at a crossroads," Vex Thor concluded. "The Drachnid Empire has long been known as the greatest military power in known space, but now we have the opportunity to be known for something far greater, as the civilization that helped usher in a new age of discovery and innovation." High Counselor Zextol rose, her ancient form catching the light in new patterns that would have been impossible 6 months ago. "And what do the humans think of this transformation they have inspired?" Chen's smile widened. "We're just getting started," she said. "Your species has taught us just as much about focus and refinement as we've taught you about creativity. Together, we're not just breaking down barriers, we're discovering that many of those barriers never really existed in the first place." The chamber filled with a crystalline harmonic that humans had recently learned was the Drachnid equivalent of applause. It resonated in patterns that matched human musical scales, another small but significant sign of how deeply the two species had already influenced each other. "Perhaps," Vex Thor mused, watching the humans and drachnids in the chamber interact with easy familiarity, "this is what true power looks like. Not the ability to impose order, but the wisdom to let new possibilities emerge naturally." "That's the thing about possibilities," Chen replied, gesturing at the galaxy map with its growing constellation of joint projects. "Once you learn to see them, you realize they were always there, just waiting for someone to ask the right questions." As the council session concluded, Vex Thor reflected that the Drachnid Empire had set out to conquer humanity and instead had found something far more valuable, a new way of seeing the universe itself. The game, as humans would say, had changed forever, and the rules were still being written.